As always, thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, George Masri, and you are tuning into the Well Off Podcast, where today I interview Jack Bosch. He's the co-founder of Land Profit Generator and also a coach with the Land Profit coaching program. He works alongside his wife, Michelle, and they've completed over 4,000 land flips in the Phoenix, Arizona market. They've also used the system to create generational wealth for their family. So on this episode, we talked about wholesaling land in Phoenix for about 5 to 45% of market value. They're buying these pieces of land for huge discounts. We discussed how he's able to find these deals and the 3 types of land that they look for. We also talked about who he wholesales the land to and how he creates systems for people to be able to do this anywhere in the world. He even talked about one of his clients being in Germany. So I think you're really going to enjoy hearing about the systems that they've created, like setting up these phone lines, these virtual mailboxes, using mailing houses, all this stuff. So if you do appreciate the episode, I just ask you to share it with a friend and leave us a review. I would love to hear your comments and what you're thinking. So if you do it on the the Apple Podcast platform, that would be greatly appreciated. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. So there you have it. Enjoy the episode and enjoy the rest of your day. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Jack Bosch today. Jack, I appreciate you joining me all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, George. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So obviously you have a whole system. You got the shirt here with the Land Profit Generator on it. For those that don't know about your system, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about it? But actually, sorry, before we do that, I always start off by asking you a little bit about your childhood.
Sure.
Just tell me about where you grew up and 1 or 2 things you remember.
All right. So I am, as you can probably already, by just me opening my mouth and saying a few words, you can tell I have an accent, right? So I live in Phoenix, Arizona, am now American citizen, but I was born and raised in Germany. As a matter of fact, a combination of Germany and Argentina, South America. My dad's a high school teacher. Mom, a stay-at-home mom, and was born in Germany in a small town close to Switzerland and Austria and France, like in the Black Forest, kind of like a few hours west of Munich. And at age 3 or 4, I think almost 4, my dad decided to take a teaching job in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. So we went there for 5 years, and then we came back. And then since then, we came back right to our small town again, went to school there, graduated there, went to university there. And then on my last year in college, I decided to do an exchange program with an American university and ended up in Illinois, where 3 weeks into it, I walked, this wonderful young lady walked by and was like, "Ooh, hello, who's that?" And long story short, she's now my wife of more than 20 years.
Awesome.
So a few things I remember. Well, I remember growing up, in a sense, like going to Argentina, growing up speaking Spanish, learning Spanish, coming back, readjusting. I remember I had a pretty happy childhood, not a wealthy childhood by all means. My dad is just one normal middle school teacher, one salary, mom, stay-at-home mom. But in a small town, running around my bicycle, spending my summer with friends, like pre-cell phone time, basically just like leaving the house after homework was done and to the words, "Be back by dinner," and just having fun and riding around and horsing around. So had a great time, but never thought about business. Just only started about thinking about business once I came to the US.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your business, about the Land Profit Generator, and what's that system like? What do you guys do? Give us a little background.
So we do real estate investing, and just like any other people in real estate investing, like of the house flippers, right? In house flipping, there's a concept called wholesaling, where you basically put a house under contract and then you sell it to somebody else who's then going to rehab it or so. And so, well, we do basically the same thing, just without the number one complicating factor in real estate, which is the house. So in other words, we are basically taking pieces of land that the owners no longer want. We find them, we get them under contract for rock bottom prices, in many cases anywhere between 5% of market value and about 45% of market value. So basically 5 to 45 cents on a dollar. And then we turn around, we put them under contract, with no escrow deposit, with a longer time period of purchasing time. So we don't need to do what the house flippers need to do. We don't need to, we buy your house in 7 days. We deal with people who own these properties for decades. They own them free and clear. They just don't want them anymore. They're non-wanters. Most of these properties are worth between about $5,000 or $10,000 and $300,000. They're just life has changed, circumstances have changed. Their kids don't want them, and they're willing to give them up at steep discounts. So we put them under contract. Then we go market them right away again using online tools. And then we sell them and we mark them up. So let's say we put something on a contract for 20 cents on the dollar. We sell it again for 60 cents on the dollar, which is a classic wholesale deal, right? You buy cheaper, super cheap, and sell it cheap. And then we make 3 times our money, 4 times our money, 5 times our money, sometimes 10 times our money. And we move on to the next deal.
Cool. So a couple of questions came up as you were describing all that.
Sure.
The first one is, how do you find your deals? Do you have I'm assuming you have a system that you've created to find these deals. Can you kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Sure, absolutely. So we're using a direct mail-based system because, again, in land flipping, there's contrary to house flipping, there's almost no competition because everyone, just how many people do you know that flip houses? A ton. How many people do you know that flip land? Probably the first one you met, right? Or not many more. So 99% of the real estate investors go after houses, 1% goes after land. So we really have a blue ocean here in front of us, a gap in the real estate market. And as a result, direct mail still works because while a house owner gets like 20 phone calls, text messages, and letters every single week about their house, a landowner gets nothing ever, right? So as a result, when we send out these letters, the people are like, oh, yeah, I'm interested in selling this property. I've been paying property taxes for many, many years. I'm not using the property. I used it 30 years ago, perhaps to go camping there a few times. I just don't want it anymore. And so they're responding. So number one, direct mail, because we get a very high response rate. It's typically between about 2 and 10% is what we get a response rate, which if you look at it in the house flipping side of things, again, most people get like a quarter of 1%. Right? And that's a good response rate these days. So we're getting 10x, 100x that as response rates. And now it sounds hard to believe. But so what we focus on is we don't just focus on any piece of land, right? We have 3 kinds of land that we focus on. And these kinds of 3 kinds of land is number one, it's lots in what we call the path of growth. So we focus on larger cities, like a couple $100,000 and more, couple 100,000 people and more. And we go on the outside of those cities, right, where the last development ends and then a little bit further out from there. That's what's typically called the path of growth. The city's growing, the city's already full, so it needs to grow to the outside. Well, out there, prices on the outside, if you're 10, 15, 20 minutes outside of the city, you can get 2 acres. 2 acres are worth $50,000. You can get them for 10 and flip them for 35. Right? You made $25,000. One of our students right now, literally sent me a message that they got a deal for $130,000 and are closing on it today for $180,000 for a $50,000 deal profit. And the property is probably worth $300,000, right? So we have identified that there's a lot of land and a lot of demand. So this is a nice match. We don't just go randomly buy stuff and then don't know if we're going to sell it. We're focusing on the kinds of properties that already have built in a huge buyer pool. So that's one. The second one is recreational acreage, like 10 plus acres in rural areas where people with RVs and ATVs and dirt bikes and razors and motocross bikes and quads and so on, they love going out for the weekend and have their own space where they can even bring their friends, 2, 3, 4 RVs, go together on their own land and then have a blast. My own chiropractor just bought 6 acres out in New Mexico, about 5 hours from here. And now every time he takes off Friday and Monday and he just goes out with his RV and he spends a weekend with his buddy that also has an RV and who owns the property next door. And they just go horse around and go shooting and go hunting and do all the things that you do, obviously only in hunting season. The third kind of properties is actually properties in the city. And those are infill lots, and those are super attractive to the builders. So again, the first ones are the path of growth. They're attractive to a lot of people that want to live a little bit close to the city, like future retirees, people that perhaps can't afford to live in the city, but they want a little bit more of a lower cost lifestyle, but they don't want to be in the middle of nowhere, right? Those people, and the COVID buyers has right now completely exploded our market, because with COVID, with the ability to work from home, there's a ton of people say like, you know what, I'm just going to buy the 2 acres outside of town, build a house over there. I got utilities, I got water, electricity, and saying I put a septic system on there. And if I need to be in the office, I'm only 20 minutes away from the city.
Yeah.
But if I don't need to be in the office 6 days out of the 7 days of the week, I'm enjoying life here. I can get a horse for my kids. I can get some goats. I can have a big playground. I can have fun, and I'm a distance from other people, right? That distance thing is an issue these days. So COVID has completely exploded our market in a positive sense. And then lastly, the infill lots is the builders who buy these properties. So we focus on these properties. We identify who they are in a certain price range with a few other criteria. We send them a letter. They respond back to us, like, and then 2 to 10%. Then we do a little online research. And the nice part is, because this is land, you don't have to go on the property. I mean, there's nothing to see. I mean, I can see if there's a tree on the property from at home using Google Earth just as much as if I'm on the property.
Yeah.
So as a result, we have people doing this from outside of the country. So we have Canadians doing this in the United States. The guy I just talked about that does $50,000 deal right now, he lives in Germany, and he has never in his life been in the United States, but he's flipping lots in the United States. Cool. So basically, we get some data, we send them an offer, they accept the offer, we put them on the market online, we find a buyer, and we close again. Basically, it's virtual land wholesaling is what we do.
Okay, awesome. So just to recap, there's 3 types of land that you focus on: lots in path of growth, recreational land, and then infill lots in major cities. So the question that I have for you is, once you get these properties under contract, who are you wholesaling to? Who's looking to buy these lots from you?
Well, as I mentioned, if it's there in the city, it's the builders. Yeah. Like the builders right now, prices have almost like doubled in some markets in the last 2 years. In Arizona, for example, where I live, the median, or the Phoenix area, greater Phoenix metro area, the median house value is now $378,000 or something like that. Probably that was a few months ago. It's probably already close to $400,000 right now. You can build a 2,000 square foot house for $400,000. The builders built these houses for $100 a square foot. So it costs the builder $200,000 to build a house. If they have another $30,000 of other expenses, if they make $100,000 in profit on that deal, they can still pay $70,000 for the lot. So we can find a lot for $40,000. That builder snatches it out of our hand for $70,000 that same day, right? That's number one. Again, in the path of growth, it's a lot of the people are retirees that buy these properties, or just, again, the COVID buyers that buy these properties. So we do B2C. We basically sell to the end consumer usually. And the end consumer is just somebody that wants a piece of land. Particularly if it's in the path of growth, there's sometimes also financial buyers. So they buy it, they're taking money off the stock market, buying this property that's worth $60,000. We got it on a contract for 12. They're buying it from us for 40, no, for 35. We make 20, what is that? 25, 12, 22, $23,000 in that deal. They now sit on it. They wait for the city to approach little by little. And as the city approaches, prices in those areas go up, right? And all of a sudden, 10, 15 years from now, that property is not worth 60 anymore. That property is worth $400,000. And they made a tremendous return. We made a great return. Everyone is happy. Right? Yeah. And the properties in the rural area are what we call recreational buyers. Basically the RV, ATV kind of crowd, of which about a good 10, 20% of the population of every city absolutely loves that kind of stuff.
So my question for you now is that example you gave of the person in Germany that's investing in Phoenix, what knowledge do they need to have? What do they need to know? And who's providing them with the knowledge in order to be able to invest in your market?
Okay, wonderful. Right. So, well, obviously, not only that, my wife and I and our team, we have flipped 4,000 properties ourselves in the United States, but we also teach this now. So we have coaching programs, and we actually have coming up right now what we call a master class, which is a 5-day free training done via Facebook. That is where we walk everyone through the steps one by one. But one of the sessions we do there, and one of the sessions that I also can explain right now here, is when you do this from outside of the United States. So this works really, really well inside of the United States, very simply because of the privacy laws, or actually the lack thereof, in the United States. So in the United States, all the information about who owns a piece of property, where does that person live, the actual mailing address of that person, how long have they owned the property, how much have they paid for the property, what's the assessed value of the property, what's the legal description of the property, what's the size of the property, really a ton more things, is all public information. To my knowledge, that's not the case in Canada. To my knowledge, that's not the case in Mexico. For sure, that's not the case in Germany and most of the European countries all of them that I'm aware of. So as a result, this works really, really well here. So what we have now created is an opportunity for people to also from outside of the country invest in the United States. And what you need to do therefore is you basically need to set up your business in a virtual way. And one of the things for that is, for example, the first thing we do is we set up a virtual phone number. Now from Canada, you're in the same time zones at least, right? That's a benefit here. When I teach our German students, they are obviously anywhere between 6 and 9 hours ahead of the US, and that's a bigger problem. But either way, we usually set up a phone system. So for example, there's a company called Ring Central that we use on our that you set up a secondary phone system with a secondary phone number that rings through on your phone. So you don't need to carry 2 phones. You don't have to have a big phone system. It's just an app that you subscribe to. You get a phone number, and now you can use it worldwide. And now you can get phone calls from people anywhere in the world. So that's important because you can also take one of these phone numbers and forward it to a call center. And that's what most of our students do, for example. So the getting the lists, right? We talked about that the data is public. So public information. Well, getting the list is easy because there's actually data services that you can subscribe to. And then for a few cents a record, you can actually get them. We actually even have a software that's plugged into the data service. So our software subscribers can actually plug the data right from the service into the system. Then we're also plugged into a mailing house. So you can go from there, directly send the letters out to a mailing house. So my Germans and the Canadians, they're actually using an American mailing house to send those letters out. So you don't need to stuff, fold, and print letters from Canada and then send them over the border. That takes forever. It's more expensive and so on. We don't want to do that. Instead, we're using American, US-based resources for that, like a US-based phone system, virtual phone system, a US-based mailing house, a US-based call center that can take your phone calls, right? Then also your offers, you can use that same mailing house to send out the offers. So you use a US-based mailing house to send out the offers. And then the only thing you still need is a mailbox in the United States. And for that, there are services like what's called virtual mailboxes. And a virtual mailbox is basically, there's hundreds of providers. You just go into Google and search virtual mailbox. Compare the different offerings. Some of them even deposit checks for you, right? So some of them, and what they do is that a letter, so let's say you send an offer out with a mailing house. The seller receives the offer, sees the offer, takes his pen, signs the offer, sends the offer back to you, but you don't want them to have to send it to Canada. You send them to your virtual mailbox address in the United States. And what happens in the mailbox in there, they scan the envelope in, and then you get a notification that you have mail. So you go log on to your laptop, you go log on to your virtual mailbox, and you see the envelope. That looks like one of my accepted offers because we mark the envelope so that you know it's an offer. So you say like, hey guys, please open that. You check that one and that save it. And that gives the virtual mailbox company then gets a notification that you want that envelope opened. So they open the envelope, scan the envelope. And then the next day you go back in. It's like, hey, there's my accepted offer. So awesome. You print it out in Canada, sign it, co-sign it, scan it in, and then what we use, the next step is use a title company. Title companies, I think, are also common in Canada, probably. They're very much there. There's a neutral company between the seller and you that does all the research, does all the paperwork, does all the things, collects the money, records the deed, and basically does all the things in the middle. So you send that thing to them. You say, hey, I got a deal, open escrow. And then you go list the properties. And listing the property again is easy because we list these properties on places like Facebook Marketplace, Zillow.com, and all these really, really well-known mostly free websites on there. So it all can be done from the comfort of your home, really from Canada, or for that matter, from Guadalajara, or from, I don't know, from the Maldives, or from Hawaii, or from wherever you really want to live in.
Awesome. I love the system that you've created. It sounds like you have everything sorted out, and you've created a procedure for every single task, which is awesome. As you were speaking, I was thinking about your mailing house. I'm just wondering, so are these letters that you're sending out, are they personally addressed? And if so, does the mailing house take care of that? Or is it just a generic letter that they're sending out and you just send them the template, they print it out and mail it on your behalf?
No, it's a personally addressed letter. Now it's printed, not handwritten. So it's not handwritten. It's always like people misunderstand me when I say that, it's like, oh, you want it to be handwritten? No need to handwrite letters, right? That takes forever again. But what you basically send the mailing house a spreadsheet of all the people and their addresses that you want to send it to. And then you send them your letter template, and they do a mail merge right there on the fly. Yeah. And every letter, for letter 1 is addressed to Steve Smith and 123 Main Street. Letter 2 is addressed to Mary Jones and in a completely different city. And they're being mail merged in, so that every single letter is both on the envelope and on the actual letter specifically addressed to the owner of the property.
Awesome. That's so cool. And do these letters go out regularly, or do you just send them out one time?
We only sent them out one time to each seller. Having said that, in order to get the deal flow coming, you want to get into rhythm where you send out a certain amount of letters every week or every other week or every month, depending on the volume you want to do. Now, we have students that do 100 deals a year, right? That make $1 million a year in profits. They send out letters every single week. Now, not to the same people. The same person only gets a letter every time you come back into that area, probably every 6 to 12 months, right? Mm-hmm. But so you basically select several counties. We like to operate on a county level, so which is the same thing as like not smaller than provinces, I think, but whatever it is in Canada. And you go and you get a certain amount of letters based on the criteria that we select them for. That gives us a high likelihood of hitting those sellers. And then you send out, let's say, 1,000 letters this week. And then 2 weeks later, send out another 1,000 letters to a different batch of owners. And then 4 weeks later, it's another 1,000 letters to the next batch of owners. And typically, once you honed in your system, so it takes a few months or 2-3 months to hone in your systems, right? And go to a little bit of a test phase that we guide our students through. Then you can reasonably expect to get a deal for every about 700 to 1,000 letters that you send out. Mm-hmm. Now that's a reasonable expectation. So if each letter costs, let's say 60, 70 cents, you're basically spending about $400 or $500 for every deal you get, but then the average deal makes about $10,000 to $15,000 in profits. So it becomes a numbers game, a very predictable numbers game that you go invest a little bit in mailings, and then you get your responses, your offers, your deals, and then you send off enough letters to get 4 deals, you get them back, you now make $30,000, right? And that becomes very, very predictable, and that's how it's designed. It's designed not as a treasure hunt, it's designed as a predictable, repeatable, and scalable business.
I love that. That's awesome. I love what you've created. I love all the systems you put in place. It's awesome. Yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. I'm sure there's a lot more to your system. Is there anything we're missing? Any important piece here that we didn't discuss?
Well, there's one piece that I perhaps want to mention, and that is our second way of selling the properties, which really typically elicits a little bit of a double take by people, because what people hear about land, what they normally think about land is, number 1, is expensive. Number 2, it doesn't cash flow. Number 3, is risky. Well, let me address those. It's only risky if you're planning to hold on to it and do something big with it. So the downtown 2 acres next to the ballpark that costs $20 million and that you can develop into a high rise, that is a risky proposition, because if you do that in the wrong timing on the market, it can all collapse and you can lose your shirt, right? That is not what we're talking about here whatsoever. We're talking about the property worth $10,000 all the way to $300,000, or $5,000 all the way to $300,000 in the outskirts of the properties and things like that. And then we're also talking about flipping them, so we never hold on to a property. So with that said, one way that we sell the properties actually addresses the second point. They say land doesn't cash flow. Well, land does cash flow if you sell it a certain way. And one of the things that we do with a lot of our deals is we sell those properties with seller financing or self-financing, seller carryback. So what the most beautiful thing in the world to do is take a property, let's say that's worth $50,000, get it under contract for $10,000, then go sell it for $50,000, because the beauty here is that when you sell with seller financing, you actually don't need to discount the price anymore, because the offer is in the low down and low monthly payment. So you're already offering a really cool deal. It's like a car, even a Ferrari. They don't have to discount the Ferrari to sell it. They offer financing on the Ferrari, right? And that's why they can charge $300,000 for the Ferrari, right? So we're doing the exact same thing here. So we're selling that property now at $50,000, and we're asking for a very reasonable 22% down payment. So now we're getting, let's say, $11,000 as a down payment on that property, 22%. So if you remember, we have it under contract for $10,000, but now we're getting 11 as a down payment. And what that means, we can structure the deal such that we buy it and we sell it both on the exact same day. And we can structure it in a way that we use the buyer's $11,000 to pay the seller the $10,000, to use $1,000 goes to the title company. So now we bought that property without paying a dollar for it. We sold the property for $50,000. We're now carrying a seller financing note of $40,000 with $500 a month payments for the next 15 years. So in other words, we now generated cash flow to the tune of something like $90,000 over the next 15 years without taking a dollar out of our pocket.
Awesome.
And we do lots and lots and lots of deals just like that.
That's a really quick way to replace your income. And if you're looking to retire, whatever you're looking to do, you start bringing in that cash flow, build it up, you'll get there very quickly. That's awesome.
And the most beautiful part about it is cash flow without tenants, without termites, without toilets, without repairs, without midnight move-outs, because it's seller financing cash flow. The worst thing that can happen is that person stops making payment. But then so what? Let's say they pay for 2 years. They pay you $500 a month. That's $12,000 for the 2 years. Now they stop making payment. Even in the worst state of the United States, it doesn't cost you more than $1,500 to foreclose on that. In some states, you can foreclose within 3 weeks for $50. But let's pick the worst states. It might take you 6 months and $1,500 to foreclose on that. What's the problem? There's not a problem here, because worst case, you collect the $12,000. Now you give $1,500 back. You still have $10,500 in the pocket. By that time, the property has now gone up another 30% in value. You now sell it not for $50,000, you sell it for $65,000. Get another $13,000 in down payment and continue that journey again. And I mean, people always ask me, well, what if they don't pay? Well, financially speaking, that's the best thing that could happen to you, because then you get the property back and get to do that again and again. Obviously, that's not our business model. We rather work with our buyer and extend the payments, make sure that they can continue making those payments. But if it happens, it's not a big deal. And our default rate is only about 4% on all our loans. So it's the same as the commercial bank on houses.
Beautiful. Well, it sounds like a really good, well thought out system. And I can see why it would work. Theoretically, everything seems to make a lot of sense. So I appreciate you sharing all that with us. So I wanted to move on to the next section, which is the random 5, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You just tell me the first answer that comes to mind. And the first question is, what's something childish that you enjoy?
I still love watching cartoons. I mean, like Disney cartoons. The other day, my wife and I were flying to flying to Florida, and I think or something like that. And then I showed it to my wife, and she's just like, "Really, you're watching that?" And it's like, "Sure, why not?" I mean,
Yeah.
they're well-made movies. They have a beautiful storyline, and we have a 14-year-old home. She doesn't even watch them anymore, but I still do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Cartoons are pretty cool, or animated movies. Number 2, what's your favorite kind of weather?
My favorite kind of weather is 70s,
Yeah.
with a little bit with nights just cool enough to wear a light jacket, but not to be cold or hot. Now I
Yeah.
live in Arizona. We don't have a whole lot of that, but we do have from right now all the way till May. We have days like that. So I like those 60s, 70s days. Worst getting in the morning, you wear a little jacket and so on. Really, that's why we live here. And that's why also our land business allows us to escape in the summer. Like the moment school is out, which in Arizona is about May 20th, we usually take off and we go. This summer we went to Hawaii for a month, and then we came back for a little bit and went to Germany for a little bit. And outside of COVID, we usually go about 3 weeks to Europe. Then we come back for a couple of weeks, and then we go about 3 weeks to Hawaii. By the time we're back, it's August, and then we have 6 weeks more of heat, and then it becomes beautiful again.
Awesome. Cool. I love that. You got created that life for yourself through what you've done. So that's great.
Exactly right.
Number 3, if you could ask your future self one question, what would it be?
To let me know who wins the Super Bowl so I can go bet on it at that point of time, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Perfect.
I'm thinking back to the Future 3 when they get the hand of that book with the winning lotteries and stuff, whatever, with all the winning races and so on. So
my brain.
No, my first thought actually went towards health. And I was like, hey, what if assuming that in my future self I'm still healthy is like, or if I'm not healthy is like, hey, what do I need to do to really make sure I stay healthy? Because health is our first wealth, right? I really take good care of my health. We try to be somewhat sporty. We eat healthy and things like that. But hey, you never know what's happening. And luckily to this point, I'm 51. To this point, I'm not as much taking, not even a single pill of any shape or form for anything.
Awesome. So. Good for you. That's great. Great to hear. Number 4, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
The biggest risk I've ever taken is probably 2 things. One is coming over to the US and I had a job lined up, everything at my apartment subleased for a year and not going back. But I didn't look at that as a risk because I got a job offer here in the US, and what's the worst thing that could happen? I just quit. So I could just quit and go back home if things didn't work out with my girlfriend back then. That's not my wife of 20 years, right? And business partner and the CEO of our business. But the real thing is, like, back in 2004, we had done about 150 deals that year, and we wanted to scale further. So what we did is we decided to put up a big in-person land auction. And we put 170 properties under contract in a matter of like 4 months, went full out, hired a bunch of people, and then we spent about $200,000 advertising that big auction. And we didn't know if a single person would show up. And luckily, the doors opened, 400 people showed up when we made $1 million that day in profit. But it was the biggest risk that we've ever taken. Mm-hmm. Now, since then, we don't do this anymore. Instead, we have moved all our sales online, which makes it which means that people cannot replicate it. Because obviously, you can't just copy that model, and not everyone is able to spend $200,000 on an auction. But everyone can take a piece of property, create a nice listing, put it on Facebook. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's why our coaching students right now, they do that. But that was the biggest thing. We put everything on the line. You know, the credit card companies sometimes send you checks. Well, we used them, cashed them in, and we used them for advertising. We took a line of credit against a lot that we did own, and we just like went down to the wire financially for that one event, and then it paid off to the tune of $1 million in profits in one day.
Awesome. Great. I'm glad to hear it worked out for you. And the final question, is, what's one item on your bucket list?
An item on a bucket list. One item is a safari in Africa, and that is something that we were actually looking to do. We had actually almost everything booked already in December and go there. So December to South Africa and do a safari. But just the last moment decided it was too hectic. We only have like 12 days and it would have been a 10-day trip from Phoenix to New York to Cape Town and then do all this entire thing with the time changes. So we are going to do this though next year summer. Yeah. Assuming COVID and so on allows it and the travel restrictions, we're going to do this next summer. It's been a lifelong dream to do a really nice luxury safari, and we're going to do it then.
Awesome. My goal was to do that exact same thing. Like, it's so crazy because that's exactly what I've wanted to do for the last few years too. So I hope you get to do it next year, next summer. And before we end things here, how do people reach you and what services do you provide?
All right. So we provide, again, we are a coaching company. We have a coaching program, but we also provide free master classes where we show everything. And the simplest way somebody can get a hold of that is just simply go to www.landprofitmaster.com. Landprofitmaster.com. You'll see when the next one of these coming up. There's one coming up right now. And then even if not, it gets redirected to perhaps the next event, or one of our team members gets a notification, can get in contact and let you know when the next kind of these free events happening. So landprofitmaster.com is the best way.
Awesome. Jack, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing all this, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, George.
As always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the content. And if you did, I ask you to share this with a friend, with a family member, somebody who might benefit. And it's always appreciated if you can leave us a review, especially if you're listening to it on the Apple Podcasts app, or if you're on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, comment, and your support is always appreciated. Thank you very much.